This is part 2 of my lecture on cost, volume, profit for Accounting 311. Sometimes, instead of describing the break-even point in terms of quantities of units, it's better to use sales dollars. So we can make a very simple adjustment here in order to do that. Define the contribution margin ratio to be equal to the contribution margin per unit divided by the price per unit. Then the profit becomes equal to the contribution margin ratio times P times Q minus the fixed cost. Now this may look a little bit odd, but the reason it works is when you put contribution margin ratio in for contribution margin, as I've substituted here, you can see that we have a P in the denominator, but that's really shouldn't belong there. We don't see it over here. So we need to put another P in the numerator, so now we're just having P over P, which is 1. So then it would actually work out. And then what you end up doing is solving for the Q, but in terms of contribution margin ratio, well, you don't actually end up with Q. What you end up with is contribution margin over P, right? And so you can see it over here that what you actually end up with is P times Q equal to profit plus fixed cost divided by the contribution margin ratio, right? It's because of that P in the denominator. But P, or price per unit, times quantity, well, that's just the revenues at the target profit, which is what we're looking for. So here are the problems that we worked on before. Same parameters: fixed cost $1,000, price $10, variable cost $6, target profit $200, and then in the second part, tax rate of 20%. Now I want you to use the formula for contribution margin ratio to calculate the amount of sales, in other words, the total revenue required to earn a profit of $200, and the total amount of revenue required to earn $200 after tax. You should stop the video, work through the numbers, and then on the next slide you'll see the solution. As you can see, the solution looks very similar to before. Really the only difference is that we have the contribution margin divided by the price. Well, if you remember, the contribution margin was $4, the price is $10, so the contribution margin ratio is 40%. So if you take $1,200 divided by 40%, you end up with $3,000, which is the amount of revenue required to earn a profit of $200. Working through the same problem now with a tax rate of 20%, right? So we have to gross up the after-tax profit by 1 minus the tax rate. That gives us $250. Add that to the fixed cost of $1,000, divide by the contribution margin ratio of 40%, and now we see that the sales revenue required to hit an after-tax profit of $200 is $3,125. Now, this is a little bit of a different topic here, but before we can go on to handle multiple products, we're going to have to remember what a weighted average is. So I'm just giving a quick example here of a simple average and how a simple average is different from a weighted average. So let's say we had 5 students, and here's the number of credits students took in a given semester, and here's their GPA for that semester. Now, if we wanted to calculate the simple average GPA, we would just take the total amount of GPA, right? 3, 3, 2, 4, and 3. So the total is 15, and we would divide by the number of students. Well, there are 5 students. So 15 divided by 5 gives us an average GPA of 3. But the problem with that is that implicit in the calculation is that each student is taking the same number of accounting credits, but that's not true. So to get a better average, we take what's called a weighted average. And the weights here are the proportion of accounting credits taken that semester by each student. So student 1 took 15 out of 75 credits, so we're going to give them a weight of 15 divided by 75, and now we're going to multiply that by their GPA 3, and we're going to add that to the student 2. Student 2 took 12 credits, So 12 over 75 times 3. And then we just continue until we cover all the students. If we do it that way, it works out that the weighted average GPA is 2.88. Now, a simpler way of calculating it is to take the credits times the GPA for each student, and I've done that calculation, and then just add them up, and you can see we get 216. And so we're going to take the 216, divide by the 75, and end up with the same number, 2.88, which is, once again, capturing the fact that not all students are taking the same number of credits, and so therefore the average GPA should reflect that difference. We're going to use weighted average GPAs in the next video.